Welcome to Failed Forward, a podcast for professionals who are wondering, how the hell did I get here?
Join your host, Rachel Durkan, and me, Donna Miller, as we discuss the messy, bumpy, and often unattractive journey to success.
After all, if it isn't hard to do, is it really worth doing? Hello, and welcome to Failed Forward, the podcast for those of us wondering, how the hell did I get here? My name is Rachel Durkan. I'm with Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are a web branding, marketing, and sales enablement agency that customizes and working with clients with a complex sale. So if you have a sales team that you want to have more qualified meetings and close more deals, we can help build a marketing to sales infrastructure to make that happen. And I am joined every week by my lovely and talented co-host, Donna Miller.
Why, thank you, Rachel Durkan. Happy to be here. I am Chief Visionary Officer at C3 Workplace and founder of Donna Miller Business Growth Consulting. And for 30 years, hard to believe, we've been helping companies accelerate their growth by providing support and advisory services around operations, finance, and biz dev. We allow growing business owners and teams to focus on that which drives the business forward. Our clients know that by bringing us in, we're going to build smart, efficient, connected, and executable systems. They can execute or we can. And that really is the foundation for building a company that will run and grow without you, something that I'm kind of passionate about. And today we are joined by Andrew Donofrio. So Andrew, I know you. I know how fabulous you are, but can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how fabulous you are?
Sure. So I love the title of this because I often ask myself, how the hell did I get here? I started out in an industry that was very different than what I do now. I started out in government. I was in law enforcement from the ages 18 to 43. I had my full career in. My claim to fame was starting a computer crimes unit in Bergen County. And I grew that and leveraged a lot of leadership experience in that role. And when I left, I wanted to do what I do now, which is coaching, but I followed the money and started a tech company. It did really, really well, but I was incredibly miserable, only because it really didn't have the same mission that we had in law enforcement. And it was a lot of, litigation support, check the box. Not that anything's wrong with it. It just wasn't for me. So I was ultimately able to transition out of that. And I started coaching about 9 years ago. And I started out very sort of singularly focused, professional and leadership development, because it sounded cool, right? And it's also what I knew. I knew leadership and I knew professional development. But what I quickly found was that people came to sessions with everything. And so, I've had people come with relationship troubles and financial troubles and personal issues. And so I decided to level up. And I went out and really educated myself and got a lot of experience, a lot of certifications in a lot of areas. And the term that I resisted for the longest time, which was life coach, I incorporate and say pretty freely now. So I do, basically when I describe it, I say that I am a personal and professional development coach. And it's taking people from where they are now to where they want to be. And, I do that through the education and experience, but also through the painstaking work I did earning my PhD in stupidity in life and bringing that experience to it as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach to overall fulfillment and well-being. That's kind of how I structure the practice.
So normally I would ask, what was your biggest professional obstacle? But since you've talked to so many failures to successes, what do you see as a common thread in professional obstacles?
Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question, Rachel. And I think they marry up. One of the things that I felt when I left law enforcement and government work, and to be fair, that's what government does. It kind of instills this mindset of scarcity and not one of abundance, right? So my piece of the pie is here. There's only so many ranks to go around, so you've got to get yours. And so when I left and I was in business, I had to put that down. But I see that in the clients I've worked with that own businesses as well. And how it manifests itself is fear. It's operating from a place of fear and afraid to be bold. And so how it translated for me, it wasn't so much fear, it was more, I just have to change the perspective because it was causing too much angst in my life. I would get upset over being in an environment when somebody did what I did. I would get threatened by that and I would get very protective, and it really didn't serve me. And so when I see it through others, I'm quick to try to coach through that and coach out of it, and making sure that it doesn't change the way you approach the growth of your business. But that's probably the biggest thing, was the mindset around scarcity versus abundance was probably the biggest thing I had to overcome, and what I see others have to overcome.
And just because I'm very curious, so we operate in similar ways. And I often say as well, whenever I have a session with a client, we're talking about business growth, but we always start with what's going on personally, because unless we can talk about what's going on personally and right size it a little bit, and I'm not a life coach and I'm not a therapist, but I can share my experience. I know that unless we address that, we're not going to get to where we need to be. So, Andrew, where do you think that, do you have a sense, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, of where that scarcity mentality comes from? It's pervasive. And I'm curious as to where that comes from.
Well, not to get too geeky, I mean, part of it is the evolutionary brain we possess, right? I mean, we possess this brain of, sort of
Fight or flight.
fight or flight, hunt and gather kind of thing. And so,
Kill. Yeah.
what was that?
Like protecting your kill, not
Exactly right. Yeah, protecting your peace, your tribe, that type of thing. So I think there's a component of that, but I also think some of it's born of experience, right? There's always, we grow up with a fight for recognition. We grow up for, comparison in grades, comparison in sports. So we're consistently, as human beings, pitted against or compared to others. So I think really that's part of the origin of it. And I often say, and I try to live by the motto now, that comparison is the thief of joy. And so if we can kind of put that comparison down and look at self-actualization, we come from a much better place.
And you know what I find so amazing as you're saying that is, one holds you back, but man, those people who can actually embrace and bring others in, you could become the leader of the pack without even knowing it, right? You could build a culture around you of empowerment and support. And I remember actually with my company, I've had my company for almost over 15 years now. And when we grew at a steady, very slow, almost flat pace for a long time. And the year I started hiring people smarter than me was the year we took off. And for a long time, because I started my company when I was very, very young, I was scared to hire people smarter than me because they might see me as a fraud, or they might, I might not be able to lead them. And as soon as I started bringing in those people who were smarter, most of them are still with me today. And one of them was making fun of how bad I am at spelling today. So bad at it, I don't care. I've given up. But my point is that when you can embrace that, you could be the leader of a whole culture or community or company or organization. So I think that's really powerful and very hard to do.
Agreed. The unit that I created in government, I suffered from the same affliction, Rachel. It was very difficult for me to try to hire people. I was the go-to guy, right? I was the geek with the
And who
gun.
are you if you're not the
Yeah,
go-to guy anymore? Yeah.
exactly. But I had to do it. And first of all, I couldn't handle the capacity. Second of all, there were people out there that were passing me up. I had to lead. I had to grow. I had to develop a unit, build a structure. So I had to let it go, but it was not easy, to your point.
How do you get your people over that? How do you get over that? Like, what do you do? How do you coach them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really taking the veil off and identifying those things of what you should be doing versus what you're doing. I know it sounds cliche, but a lot of it also starts with, where are you now? Whether it's your business or your personal life, but let's take business. Where's your business now? Where do you want it to be? And then backing into that, how do you grow into that? Are you able to do it all by yourself? Who do you need to accomplish that? What role should you take? Right? It's putting those things in the quadrants that you've heard of before, right? Like important, urgent, so on and so forth. Not important, not urgent. And so what should you be doing to grow it? But it comes from that clear vision. And Donna, I'm sure you've experienced this. There's some business owners that are like, this is a lifestyle business. Okay, well then we know what it is, right? We know that it's going to cap here. You're not going to bring on a big staff. Others are like, I want an empire. Okay, well, what are we going to do to get there? And what do you need to let go of? What do you need to empower other people to do? So I always start, whether it's personal goals or objectives or professional ones, what are your values? What do you want? And then how are we going to achieve it?
I
I
also,
agree. And I think you have to start with both because as the business owner, as a professional, I don't believe you can separate what you want professionally from what you want personally because one fuels or funds the other. So they have to be intrinsically linked.
and there's only so much time in the day.
Exactly.
It's funny because I was talking to a group of moms, and I have to remind myself of this all the time. I was talking to a group of moms this morning. Some of them don't work or work less, and I work a lot. And one of the moms was talking about how she's running for school board and she's on the PTA and she's very involved. And I don't do any of those things. I am a mom, a class parent. I'm very good at it, by the way. And I was like, wow, she's so much more invested in this than I am. And for a second, I felt bad about myself. And then and almost immediately reminded myself that my kids are happy and healthy. This is what I've chosen. This is not a priority for me. And I let it go off my shoulder. And I was like, good for you. I'm glad that you're running for. So I think it's also about reminding yourself every day what those priorities are so that you're not comparing yourself, right? Because it's like you said earlier, it's like a primitive response
Right.
immediately to have that feeling.
Well,
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'll do is I'll create vision/mission statements in those areas of life
Mhm.
and have them read them every day. I mean, I have index cards that I get read every day. That's my boomer brain, right? Because everybody else's notes on a phone, I'm still index cards that I do take pictures of, but I do think it's important to have that reminder.
Mhm.
I agree completely. So, um, Andrew, as you kind of look at the law enforcement career, the technology career, the leadership career, what's the most important lesson or what's the important thing that kind of helped you get from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, I think it was sort of shedding the limiting self-belief type of thing. The idea of, well, what qualifies me? And there's been a lot of work put into identifying where those come from, right? And trying to reframe them. We're masters at believing our story. And so even as I started to succeed in law enforcement, it was okay, well, what makes me think I should be doing this or I should ascend to this rank? So I feel that it's identifying that story in your head. Coaching was no different. That's why I think I limited myself in the beginning to what I knew and what my experience was, right? My education, I have a master's degree in management, right? So I felt like, okay, I can do leadership and professional development.
Mhm.
But man, I made a lot of mistakes in life. What makes me think I could be a life coach? Well, I started to have to put that down and get over
Mhm.
that belief and then really educate myself and then leverage those mistakes from where I was to where I came from. So if I had to advise anybody anything about sort of ascending is identify what the story is, what the script is in your head, and strategize. Work with somebody, whether it's therapist, coach, a friend, a partner, to put that belief down and really to ascend to where your potential is.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't think that is the work that can be done on your own. I think that, whether it's a good friend, like you said, or something else, but that's the one thing that I've learned over the years is I have the least amount of perspective on what's
Mhm.
going on in my company and my life because I have tunnel vision. It's just
Close to it. You're in a
nature.
3-foot world.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, if you could do anything different in the last, in your career or your life, what would it be? Would you change anything?
Oof. Yeah, probably.
I would have won
I
the
mean,
lottery.
I listen. I'll caveat that by saying I absolutely love where I'm at in life.
Mhm.
I have no regrets when it comes to the work I do now, for sure. Perhaps I would have started it a little bit earlier, but I listened to a lot of the voices around me that said, "Hey, you have tech skills, you have tech skills." But it was a lot of years of not feeling as fulfilled as I do now. So that might be the regret. Also, maybe appreciating more of what I was capable of and
Mm.
identifying that a little bit sooner and listening to some of those voices that you mentioned, Donna, some of those people that are outside the story that are kind of feeding you like, hey, you can do this kind of thing, and owning that more. Those would probably be the things that I would change a little bit.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, it amazes me how quickly the time goes by in these podcasts. So before we wrap up, tell our audience how they can reach you.
Sure. My website's the easiest way, Andrew at andrewdonofrio.com, or my email is, the same. I'm sorry. So my website is andrewdonofrio.com and my email is andrew at andrewdonofrio.com. So I'm happy to have a chat. Those are free. So yeah, please reach out. And LinkedIn, of course, I love the LinkedIn community. So feel free to look me up there.
Excellent. We will, of course, make sure all of that is in the show notes. So once again, we want to thank you for joining us, and we want to encourage you that between now and our next episode, that consider embracing failing forward, because there's a lot to be learned by it. So thank you all and have a great week.